Obviously, we want our API endpoints to return useful data. So we need some way of storing and retrieving data. Let's use MongoDB for this purpose, as it allows us to easily create and persist our items, as well as user information for when we later want to authenticate the API. So in this project, we're going to be using Mongoose for our interactions with the Mongo database. Mongoose is an ORM library, which stands for Object Relational Mapping. And basically what it means is that we can treat our stored data as objects rather than as tabulated data, which makes it a lot easier to query. So let's begin by installing Mongoose. So we'll go to the terminal and we'll go npm I for install dash capital S for save as dependency. Oops, and then we type the name of the package, which is Mongoose. We'll now need to require the Mongoose module in the main script by coming down here and typing const mongoose equals require mongoose. And we can now connect to our Mongo database using mongoose.connect. The first argument to the connect method is the URL. And normally what that URL is MongoDB, and then for you it might be localhost, but if you're using the Vagrant box, it's going to be 127.0.0.1, and then whatever port you set in it during installation. Now the default and the port that we're using with the Vagrant box is 27017, like that. We can then add to this URL a final slash and then the name of the database. And we'll call our database printbay. Now Mongo will automatically create this database once it starts writing data to it. Now the second argument to this method is a config object. And we're going to add two config properties. The first one is use new URL parser. We'll set that to true. And the second one is use create index, and we'll also set that to true. Now these are basically new features of Mongo that are behind flags, and if we don't set these in this config object, we're going to get deprecation warnings. In PrintBay, we're selling prints of famous artworks. The data for each artwork or item will be stored in the database. MongoDB can store any kind of data, but Mongoose requires you to structure your data as a model. So let's create a model for each item. We'll put this code right here underneath our Mongoose connection for now. So we'll begin by creating a const and naming it item. And to declare a new model, you can use the model method of the Mongoose object. Now the first argument is the model name you want to use. In this case, we'll just call it item. And the second argument is an object of properties that define the model. Now, what properties will we need on this model? Well, for a start, each artwork will obviously have a title. So let's create one called title. The property is then assigned its own configuration object. So there are many properties on this object that we can configure, but for now let's just define the type. And in this case it's going to be a string. You can see now that I've added more properties to the model. So now we've got the artist name, which is a string, the image file, which is a URL stored as a string, the year of the print, which is going to be a number, and the price of the print, which is also going to be a number.